Good evening. Tonight's top story, Justin Reid looks to be getting ready to lead kickoffs for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2024. The new kickoff rules have already gotten the league and everybody else excited just about how entertaining they can be. We're expecting a lot more chances for returns, and as such, we've already heard talks about teams replacing their kickoff specialist from their kicker to another skill position like Justin Reid. So if Justin Reid is getting ready to lead kickoffs for the Kansas City Chiefs, what does this mean about what we're going to see from kickoffs in 2024? How is it going to affect the rest of the game and how it's going to affect fantasy? We will talk all of that, plus Devin Singletary, the Green Bay Packers wide receiver room, and the Las Vegas Raiders backfield, all tonight on Player Profiler today. Good evening, everyone. Happy Saturday. Glad to have you in to Player Profiler today. My name is Matt Babich. I am your Saturday host. And tonight, our opening topic is Justin Reid gearing up to be the Chiefs kickoff specialist. Nothing has been formally announced yet, but Justin Reid has been reportedly practicing kickoffs on a tee and is getting ready to lead the charge for the Kansas City Chiefs. As we know, per the new league rules, we have a completely different kickoff format, one that is going to more benefit the receiving team. There's going to be more kickoffs returned. There's going to be, from what we're hearing, more kickoffs returned for touchdowns. So more scoring in the league. It's exactly what we needed, especially after last year's abysmal performance where scoring was kind of down. And it really felt like the kickoff used to mean something. Back in the days of Devin Hester, Percy Harvin, these kicks used to mean something. And for the past 5 seasons, if not more, they haven't meant anything. And they've been more of a chore than an element of the game, but no longer. Kickoffs matter once more, and they matter so much that teams are getting ready to potentially sub out their kicker for another skill position, such as Justin Reid, to play the safety role on the kickoff coverage. Because let's be honest, no one wants to roll their kicker out there in a do or die situation where it's the kick returner and the kicker. And we know how this story ends. Unless you're Pat McAfee, you're blowing straight by the kicker and you're scoring. So we're going to see a fundamental change in football. We're not going to see kickers potentially on kickoffs anymore. This one tiny element, changing the kickoff, is going to have a lot of downstream effects in football. And it's exciting. It's going to add so much entertainment value into the league. And it's going to be interesting to see how innovative coaches work this into their arsenal. You think of certain game situations, game on the line in the fourth quarter. Team goes up, they have to kick off. Normally, the safe decision is just to boot it deep and make the team go however long it is, 75 yards, to score a touchdown or maybe kick a field goal and beat you. But if it's easier to return kicks out and gain yardage, that's going to change how many scenarios are approached. We're probably going to see a lot more going for 2 late in the fourth quarter with these offenses because they need to extend that lead because it's not as easy anymore as just booting it downfield and making the team go 75 yards. Teams are going to have to go 20, 30 yards to get a field goal, 40 yards, 50 yards to get a touchdown in some cases. Teams are going to be drawing up plays for late game kickoff return scenarios. The entire last, say maybe 4 minutes of an entire NFL game could be played differently based on the kickoffs. if Miami, say, turns into this team that is incredible at running kicks back, how do you play that? Do you take a penalty? Do you kick it out of bounds, take the penalty? Do you squib kick it? Do you kick it deep and take your chances? I don't necessarily know enough about the format to have any of these answers, but these questions are out there. And I'm very excited to see how this changes the game. From my perspective, the late game scenarios have begun to get kind of cumbersome, where there's not much excitement, not much turnover, especially in the regular season. Now with the ability to change the game in 5 seconds on a kickoff return for a touchdown, I think we're going to see a lot of variance happen in the last 4 minutes of some of these games, especially these tight games. Nothing is won anymore until the clock hits 0. So it could also impact fantasy football. So as it stands, many leagues still roster defenses. It's currently still the standard. You hop in a random fantasy league, they have defenses. And these defenses are awarded points for scoring special teams touchdowns. So if you're in a league with defenses, it may be wise to prefer teams with the dynamic playmakers. Yes, a team like San Francisco is already getting drafted high, but they're probably the defense number 1 right off the bat because they have those dynamic playmakers. If Mike McDaniel is right, and guys like Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, even probably not Christian McCaffrey given his age and being a running back, but if these dynamic playmakers are stepping up and returning kicks, if they're drawing up plays to try and score, defenses are going to be more heavily weighted in drafts that roster them. And it's going to be an important game to figure out when to value the special teams aspect that they bring versus the actual defense. Miami's an example where they're not necessarily a lockdown defense. They'll have weeks where high sack totals, high turnover totals, low points allowed, but they're a shootout prone defense and the market treats them as such. But when Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill or Devon Achane are back there trying to return kicks, returning them for touchdowns, are they more valuable than a steel curtain defense that isn't powerful on the special teams, but has a good schedule and creates turnovers, has high sack rates? There's a new game theory element being presented in fantasy football with this kickoff rule change. And it's not just going to affect fantasy football. It's going to affect real football, and it's going to affect real football in a major way. It's going to be very exciting, fresh, fun, very good rule that's been implemented into the league. It's good for the league. It's good for us. It's good for bettors. It's good for everybody. More football is good for everybody. So this kickoff rule, every day we start hearing more about this kickoff rule, and it's becoming very clear that it's going to be a big theme behind the 2024 season and how it's approached. More NFL news right after this.
This episode is made possible by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is the leader in best ball. When you go to join an Underdog Fantasy best ball draft, it fills very quickly. Especially now, it's Best Ball Mania season, baby! Best Ball Mania 5! I can't believe they're at Best Ball Mania 5 already. $15 million in prizes. They're giving out $15 million with $1.5 million to first. Playing in best ball leagues makes you better. It helps train you on player value and strategy. And Underdog offers a lot more than just best ball contests. They offer pick'ems. My new favorite, the golf pick'ems. But they have the NBA pick'ems, baseball pick'ems going on throughout the offseason. Hit the pick'ems, back to best ball, hit the pick'ems. So use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. So they've increased the maximum deposit bonus. It was $100. Now it's up to $125. When you get the Underdog app, use promo code Underworld and go draft your ass off.
Go draft your ass off with Underdog Fantasy. That's one hell of a deal. That is 5 Best Ball Mania 5 entries free if you deposit $125 into Underdog with code Underworld. Be sure to do that. We are back with Player Profiler today. Devin Singletary is being reintroduced to the New York sports media, formerly in Buffalo. They don't really count as the New York sports media. That's more centered around the Jets and the Giants. And he's starting to get that New York sports media treatment. He was asked on what he thought about replacing Saquon, how he thought he would fare replacing Saquon, filling those shoes, and typical media trap, right? But good on Devin Singletary. He humbly acknowledged that he is not Saquon Barkley, nor is he trying to be. He is trying to be Devin Singletary. He said, quote, "I've been in the league just like him. He's only been in the league a year before me. I feel like I'm a playmaker like him. So I'm just going to be me. It's been going well for me since I've been in the league. So that's what I'm going to keep doing." End quote. That's a great response by Devin Singletary. He understands that he is not a Saquon Barkley, but he is also a professional who's been paid and succeeded in starting roles for multiple different teams in his career, including a role under his current head coach, Brian Daboll. So Devin Singletary, when we look at his metrics, he has finished inside of the top 30 in true yards per carry for 3 straight seasons. He's finished inside the top 35 in yards per route run for 4 straight seasons. So we can already see here, he is a quality rusher and receiver. He has been slowly regressing in terms of creating yards on a per touch basis. But he's not Saquon Barkley, and he knows this. He's a quality back. He's a good pass catcher, a good receiver. Most importantly, he is a very good pass blocker. He was rated by PFF going into last season as one of the top rated running backs in pass blocking in the entire NFL. And that's why he's so valued. That's why Buffalo valued him for years. That's why Houston brought him in and immediately put him into a featured role. And that's why Brian Daboll wanted him back in New York. If they weren't going to pay Saquon, they can't insert Tyrone Tracy into this offense as a starter. Eric Gray is no good. And you need someone who's going to be able to help protect Daniel Jones, and that's Devin Singletary. So, sure, he's not a Saquon, but at value, I liked this signing for the New York Giants. And at ADP, Singletary has value in fantasy drafts. He finished as the RB 36 last season with only 4 touchdowns. But when we look at the stretch that he had, when he started getting more touches, 161 total yards and a score against Cincinnati, RB3. 118 yards and a score the following week against Arizona, RB8. 72 yards against Jacksonville the following week, RB18. A couple weeks later, turns out RB22 and RB7 performances. And then against Cleveland in the playoffs, went for 70 yards and a touchdown in their playoff win. He's been more than serviceable. And at value, probably one of the better running backs you can go sign in the NFL. He's cheap, but effective. And we're going to be saying it again when we get to this point next season. Devin Singletary was a value last year. He's currently drafted right around RB 36. And that's virtually the lowest he's ever finished in his career. Rookie year, RB 28. Sophomore year, RB 39. There's his floor. Next year, RB 24, RB 30, RB 36. So, sure, the ceiling isn't necessarily there. But if you're going to 0 RB or hero RB build, by the time you get to Singletary's value later on in drafts, he's absolutely worth throwing a dart on. So good on Devin Singletary for just, avoiding the media bait, understanding who he is. And speaking of blowing past media bait, Jordan Love says that he believes the Packers don't have to have a number 1 wide receiver. He told reporters, quote, "I think you don't have to have a number one receiver. I think it works out well when you can spread the ball out and you got different guys making different plays and you can put them in different areas. I think it puts a lot more stress on the defense and the calls that they can get in. So I think in the long run, it helps us not having a number one guy, a true number one guy. But I think all those guys can step up and be the one any given day." It's a very good teammate quote from Jordan Love. And I'm not going to pretend I know more ball than Jordan Love, but I don't buy into this. I think what he said is very true for the first 18 weeks of the season, for the regular season. Let's quickly examine the Green Bay receiver core. So we have Jaden Reid, very good rookie season, nearly 800 yards, finished 27th in yards per route run, finished 22nd in route win rate, was 14th in red zone targets, had 8 touchdowns. He's dynamic, was used in the rushing game. He was given manufactured touches, and he finished 5th in fantasy points per target. So efficiently racking up production and for Jaden Reid, more in a, like Jordan Love said, in that manufactured role where they were trying to get him the ball in certain situations where he was in open field, in the middle of the field. He could take off, utilize his yak ability, utilize his route winning prowess in the red zone. And so Jaden Reid is looking to take a year 2 bump. I think Reid is a very good 1B type of receiver, a receiver 2. And then you have Christian Watson, who has the mold of the 1. He has that size, speed combination that's so desirable in the league. He's an athletic freak, 90th plus percentile, everything athleticism, but he struggled to stay healthy. He truly wasn't healthy at any point, it seemed, last year. So it's tough to take his efficiency metrics at face value. He ranked outside of the top 50 in yards per route run in 2023, but ranked 12th in yards per route run in 2022. And everyone knows the 4 touchdown game, that 4-game stretch where Christian Watson was just absolutely dominating the game of football, putting up fantasy points like nobody's business. Everyone remembers that stretch. We're getting further and further away from that stretch, but it was there. And that, in that small sample, we saw what could be the Green Bay Packers wide receiver 1. Is he going to get there? Is he truly going to be able to get rid of the root cause of his hamstring issues? I don't know. I don't think anyone knows truly yet. But if he does, and he can stay on the field, despite what Jordan Love said, I think they do have a wide receiver 1, a true wide receiver 1 in Christian Watson, if he can get that figured out and stay on the field. And if they can refine his role a little bit to where he's not just purely a deep target guy, but I think part of that was the hamstring, just not being able to plant and turn. Just, I gotta go vertical. It's the only thing I can do because my hamstring is fucked. And then we move on to Devontae Wicks, who also had an impressive rookie season, nearly 600 yards, finished 24th in yards per route run and 10th in route win rate. He is one of the sleepers of the season, where, again, another guy who not a receiver 1, but was deployed in the right role, used in the right situations, has a very good quarterback, and he was able to succeed in the Green Bay Packers offense. I don't think we gave Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love enough credit for what was done in this offense last year, because these aren't household name guys, but when they're in this offense, they look like household name guys. Even Romeo Doubs, who is probably the worst of the bunch, but still a talented receiver, had 14th in red zone targets among wide receivers and 8 touchdowns last year. He looked to be a red zone weapon. So it worked for them in the regular season. But what happened when it mattered most? In the divisional round against the San Francisco 49ers, what happened? Were they able to spread the guys around and get people in different situations? No, they were not. Romeo Doubs, ironically enough, was the only Green Bay Packers receiver with more than 40 yards in that game. I believe the second highest was Jaden Reid with 39. Jordan Love finished the game with 194 passing yards in a game where, admittedly, they were finding success all game through the run and played their game that way. They weren't necessarily looking to thrash the 49ers through the air, but what happened? They lost the game. No matter how successful they were in the rushing attack, it just wasn't enough to slow down the 49ers. They weren't able to score enough points, only 3 touchdowns in the game, and they got locked up through the air by San Francisco. Now, can Christian Watson, again, rise to be that guy? I sure hope he can. I'm a fan of his, but I truly don't know at this point. But I think what this comes down to is give Jordan Love a Stephon Diggs, a prime DeAndre Hopkins, a Jamar Chase, a Tyreek Hill. You give him a game-breaking asset like that, that's the difference. That's how you beat San Francisco and go play in a NFC Championship game against your rival, the Detroit Lions. So, I again, great teammate move from Jordan Love. I just don't buy that you can get by without a wide receiver one in this league unless your name is Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. We haven't seen a team without a true wide receiver one win the Super Bowl in quite some time. You could argue maybe the Philadelphia Eagles were the last team to do it in 2018. I would argue that Zach Ertz was the Travis Kelce-like weapon, where if you have a tight end that's that elite, that is an alpha weapon that you can deploy. And I'm definitely forgetting somebody on that Eagles team. I believe it was Alshon Jeffrey potentially that year, but maybe I'm off. Regardless, it's tough to win without a wide receiver one. It'll work in the regular season, but the Packers are going to find themselves struggling to move the ball through the air in the playoffs once again, unless Christian Watson can rise and be that guy. We'll close out the show quickly discussing the Las Vegas Raiders backfield situation. Get ready for a good old-fashioned committee because Zamir White and Alexander Mattison are, quote, in this together in replacing Josh Jacobs. So they've essentially accepted that this is going to be a backfield partnership, a backfield competition. And because of this, I think we are massively overrating Zamir White in fantasy drafts. So we look at his peripherals last year, 1.4 yards per route run, fair. 4.1 true yards per carry, 28th among running backs, pretty good. Finished 55th in juke rate or evaded tackles per touch. He did, however, finish inside the top 16 in breakaway run rate. So not necessarily breaking a lot of tackles, but had a lot of burst runs, chunk plays last season. He had his arrival week against Los Angeles when he had 85 yards and a touchdown. And then against Kansas City, he had 145 total yards, but only finished as the RB16. Had 100 yards the next week, also finished as the RB16. So the lack of red zone touches, goal line touches, even when being the starter last season, is concern number one. Concern number two is his peripherals just didn't show him to be a true game-breaking asset. A quality back, probably. A game-breaking asset, no. So that alone makes me look at the market disparity between Zamir White and Alexander Mattison and say, why are we so sure that Zamir White, a 4th-round pick out of Georgia who didn't really have great metrics in college, is going to have a stranglehold on this backfield? Because that's what we're treating it as in drafts. We're treating it as a stranglehold. I cannot draft Zamir White at RB21 before Jalen Warren or other players with asymmetric upside. I can't do it. And that's because of Alexander Mattison. And I don't like Alexander Mattison. I've never liked Alexander Mattison. As a person, sure, I don't have any qualms with him, but as a fantasy asset, I've never liked the guy. But again, like a Devin Singletary, like a Zamir White, he brings value to the table, and that's why he's on the Raiders. That's why they brought him in, and they're going to look to deploy him there. So Mattison finished 31st in yards per route run last year, 44th in true yards per carry. But what we're looking at is two similar profiles. I could drown you guys in numbers, but we're looking at two similar profiles here in Zamir White and Alexander Mattison. Both have, a similar frame where Zamir White is just a little bit taller. Alexander Madison's a little heavier. So Madison Madison has the more optimal BMI, but I think Madison has the potential to be the goal line back because of that. Because he has more history being deployed in a goal line role, whether it be in relief for Dalvin Cook or in relief for Dalvin Cook. As what I meant by that is when he's starting for Dalvin Cook or when he spells Dalvin Cook in the middle of a game. But Alexander Mattison could be the goal line back immediately. Zamir White didn't look to be far and away a better pass catcher than Alexander Mattison. So Mattison is going to seep up some opportunity there. I just don't think Zamir White has the path to be an RB21 unless he proves that he's more talented than what he showed us last year. And that was in a small sample size on a Raiders team that I think overperformed because of the emotional aspect of backing Antonio Pierce, getting his job. So I think we are not in the right place in Zamir White and Alexander Mattison in fantasy drafts. Zamir White is being overdrafted, and I have never drafted him at RB21. I will never draft him at RB21. I'm sure that statement will work its way around to bite me in the butt, but Alexander Mattison, I'll throw some shots on. He's going near the end of drafts and could be in a position to finish as a top 45 running back. Doesn't sound great, but if you get that at the end of drafts, it's where you're drafting the RB60. So you might as well. That's your RB4 or 5. If you get value on Alexander Mattison in a draft, that's still valuable. That is going to do it for Player Profiler today. We are out of time. I appreciate you all tuning in to the podcast. Go check out the profiler _ NFL Twitter. If you haven't already, check out the shorts on YouTube. It has been a long weekend. Don't drink and podcast, folks. It is dangerous. But thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.